Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everyone. I am here. I am here. Running a little bit late, but I decided that I've got to be here no matter what. And so, since we are a little bit late for the Bible reading, it's probably after three where you are at, it's after one where I'm at. I think we're just going to do the reading. We have to get in at least an hour of reading each day under any circumstance, no matter what happens. We have to get it in. And so we are reading our book called The Guardian, written by Nicholas Sparks. We have been reading this book for a few days now. We are just about halfway through. And so we are going to be continuing with the reading of this book. And I hope those of you who have been here with me, is this too loud? I hope you all have been enjoying the reading as much as I have been enjoying bringing it to you. So once you come into the live, guys, get you your drink or whatever it is, sit down and relax while I read the story for you. This story is about a young woman. One of the characters in the story is a young woman called Julie. Now, Julie seems like she is the most viable mate of all the women in town, and she got eyes on her. Let's just say that her husband passed away several years ago, and now she's sort of trying to dip her feet into the dating pool again. And she has caught the eye of one. She has caught the eyes of one young man by the name of Richard. Richard so far seems to be a little bit of a shady character, but also her dead husband's best friend, as awkward as he is, Mike loves Julie and has always seen himself as being the one for Julie, but he's as awkward as a goose. He and Julie have finally gone out on a date, and I'm waiting. I'm anxious. I don't know about the rest of y'all. Where's Andrea? I am anxious to see what happens between them because I think they would make a nice couple. Even though I often say that you do not contaminate your friendship with romance, that can oftentimes be the end of the friendship. When the romance ends, it's like you can't go back. You can't backpedal and say, okay, we're not romantic anymore. Now we're going to be friends. That doesn't usually work out well because once the emotions of romance gets entangled into the friendship, you can bid the friendship goodbye. And when the romance is over, there's no way that you all are going to remain friends. Yeah, because the remnants of the animosity from the romance is going to linger, and that's going to make you not want to be the person's friend anymore. So I always say, never you contaminate your friendship with romance. Keep them separate. If we're going to be romantic, then we're going to be romantic. If we are going to be just friends, then just leave it like that. For some people, it has worked out to be great, but for others, not. So everybody pick their own poison. For me, I don't think I would want to contaminate my friendship with romance, knowing what I know. But anywho, I'm not going to be boring you all to death with my talking. We are going to go right into the reading of this book, The Guardian, written by Nicholas Sparks. So last time when we read, Julie and Mike had gone out. They had just gotten back home. Mike didn't kiss her goodbye. She went in, and as soon as she went in and Mike left, there was a knock on the door. That's where it ended. A knock on the door. So I'm just going to read that last paragraph again so as to catch up those of you who missed out on it. Right, Joe? How are you doing, my lovely love? Good to see you, Joseph. So let us begin. Knowing she wouldn't be able to fall asleep, Julie began flipping through the pages of a catalogue as she sat on the couch, replaying the evening. She was glad she hadn't kissed Mike on the porch, though she wasn't sure why. Maybe she just needed more time to adjust to her newfound feelings towards him. Or maybe she just wanted to see him squirm. When he squirmed, he was cute in a way that only Mike could be. And Henry was right. He was fun to tease. She picked up the remote and turned on the television. It was still early, not even 10 o'clock yet, and she settled on a CBS drama about a small town sheriff who feels compelled to risk his life to rescue people. 20 minutes later, just as the sheriff was about to save a youngster trapped in a burning car, she heard a knock on the door. Singer rose quickly, bounding through the living room. He poked his head out the curtains, and she assumed that Mike had come back. Then Singer started to growl. Now, Singer is Julie's dog, and Singer has so much intuition that he's using up, but Julie is not picking up on it at all. Let's continue. Richard, Julie said. Hey, Julie. He held out a bouquet of roses. I picked these up at the airport on the way home. Sorry, they're not as fresh as they should be, but there wasn't much of a selection. Julie stood in the doorway, Singer by her side. He had stopped growling as soon as she had opened the door, and Richard offered an open palm. He sniffed before looking up, making sure the face matched the familiar scent. Then he turned away. Oh, him, he seemed to say, not thrilled with this, but okay. It wasn't so easy for Julie. She hesitated before taking the flowers, wishing he hadn't brought them. Thank you, she said. I'm sorry for coming by so late, but I wanted to say hi before heading back to my place. It's okay, she said. I called earlier to let you know, but I guess you weren't in. Did you leave a message? No. I didn't have time. They were announcing final boarding, and my seat wasn't confirmed. You know how it goes. I left you one yesterday, though. Yeah, she nodded. I got that one. Richard brought his hands together in front of him. So were you in? He asked. Earlier, I mean. She felt her shoulders give a little. She didn't want to do this. Not now. I was out with a friend, she said. A friend, huh? You remember Mike? We grabbed a quick dinner. Oh, yeah, from the bar that night, right? He said. The guy who works in the garage? That's the one. Oh, he said. He nodded. Have fun? I haven't seen a lot of him lately, so it was nice to be able to catch up. Good. He glanced off to the side of the porch, then down at his feet, then at her again. Can I come in? I was hoping we might be able to talk for a few minutes. I don't know, she edged. It's kind of late. I was just getting ready for bed. Oh, he said. That's fine. I understand. Can I see you tomorrow then? Maybe we can have dinner. In the shadows, his features seemed darker, but he smiled, as if he knew what her answer was going to be. Julie blinked, holding her eyes closed for an extra instant. I hate that I have to do this, she thought. I really hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Bob, at least, probably had the suspicion that the end was coming, not Richard. I'm sorry, she said, but I can't. I already made plans. With Mike again? She nodded. Richard absently scratched the side of his cheek, continuing to hold her gaze. So that's it then? For us, I mean? Is that it? Her expression answered for her. Did I do something wrong? Did I offend you, Julie? What did I do wrong? No, she protested. It's not that. Then what is it? Didn't you have fun? Win some, what's up? I just feel it for Richard and I feel it for Julie as well. Oh my God. Then what is it? Didn't you have fun when we went out? Yes, I had fun. Lots of fun. Then what is it? Julie hesitated. It's not about you at all. Really. It's about Mike and me. We just seem, well, I don't know how to explain it. What can I say? As she struggled for words, his jaw began to tighten, and she could see the muscles flexing in his neck. For a long moment, he said nothing. Must have been an exciting few days while I was gone. Huh, he said. Look, now look, I'm sorry. For what? For going behind my back as soon as I left? For using me to make Mike jealous? It took a moment for his words to register. What are you talking about, Richard? You heard me. I didn't use you. Richard ignored her, his tone becoming angrier. No? Then why are you ending this when we are still getting to know each other? And how did Mike suddenly get so interesting? I mean, I leave town for a few days, and the next thing I know, it's over between us, and Mike has taken my place? He stared at her, his lips beginning to turn white at the edges. It sure as hell sounds to me like you planned this all along. His outburst was so startling, so unexpected, that the words came out before she could stop them. You're a jerk! Richard continued to look at her for a long moment before finally glancing away. His anger suddenly gave way to an expression of hurt. This isn't fair, he said softly. Please, I just want to talk for a minute, okay? He pleaded. When Julie looked at him, she was amazed to see tears forming in his eyes. The man was an absolute roller coaster of emotions. Up, down, all around. Look, I'm sorry, Richard. I shouldn't have said what I did. And I didn't mean for you to be hurt. Really. She paused, making sure he was listening. But it's late, and we are both tired. I think I better head in before either of us says anything else, okay? When Richard didn't respond, she took a step backward and began to close the door. Richard suddenly thrust his hand out, stopping her. Jolie, wait, he said. I'm sorry. Please, I really need to talk to you. In the future, when she remembered this moment, she would always recall with shock how quickly Singer moved. Before she had time to process the fact that Richard had taken hold of the door, Singer had launched himself towards the hand, as it, as it, as if trying to catch a frisbee in flight. Singer's jaw found its target, and Richard howled in great pain as he tumbled over the threshold. OMG. Singer! Julie screamed. Richard fell to his knees, one arm extended as Singer shook his head from side to side, snarling. Stop him! Stop him! Richard screamed. Get him off me! Get him off me, Julie! Julie lunged towards Singer, grabbed his collar, and tugged hard, really hard. Let him go, Singer! Let him go, she commanded. Despite the fury of the moment, Singer fell back immediately, and Richard drew his hand instinctively to his chest, wrapping his other hand around it. Singer stood by Julie's side, fangs showing, the hair on his back standing up. Singer, no! Julie cried, still stunned by the dog's ferocity. Is your hand okay? Richard moved his fingers, wincing. Wincing. I don't think anything's broken. Julie's hand traveled to Singer. His muscles were rigid, his eyes locked on Richard. I didn't even see him coming, Richard said quietly. Remind me not to hold your door again when your dog is around. Though he spoke as if the incident were somewhat comedic, Julie didn't reply. Singer had acted instinctively to protect her, and she wasn't about to punish him for that. Desreen is here. Desreen, what's up? How you doing? Are you still having birthday fever like I am? Because I'm certainly still having birthday fever. Richard stood then, opening and closing his hand. Julie could see the indentations of Singer's teeth, though it didn't look as if he had broken the skin. He moved a step farther away from her. I'm sorry, he said. I shouldn't have tried to stop you from going inside. That was so wrong of me. You got that right, she thought, and I shouldn't have gotten angry with you earlier either. He sighed. It's just that this came at the end of a really hard week. That's the reason I wanted to come by. I know it's no excuse, but he sounded both sincere and contrite, but she held up her hands to stop him. Richard, she said. Her tone made it plain she didn't want to go into it again. Richard's eyes darted to the side. He stared, seemingly at nothing. The porch light flickered on his face, and Julie saw that she hadn't been mistaken about the earlier tears. His eyes were misting again. When he spoke again, his voice was choked up and ragged. My mother died this week, he whispered. I just came from her funeral. That's why I had to leave the note on your Jeep last night, Richard explained. The doctor said that I'd better catch the first flight I could because he wasn't sure she'd last another day. I caught the first flight out of Raleigh on Tuesday morning, and with all the new security, I had to leave in the middle of the night to get there in time. A few minutes had passed, and Richard was sitting on Julie's couch, staring at the ground, still fighting the tears. It had taken a moment to register what he had said, but once she did, she couldn't help but feel a jolt of sympathy for him. After she had stammered out the usual, I'm sorry, and why didn't you tell me right away? Richard had broken down completely, and his tears had gotten to her. Julie had allowed him into the house after putting Singer in the bedroom. Now she was sitting across from him in the chair, listening as he spoke, thinking, great timing, Julie. You can really pick your moments when it comes to breaking hearts, huh? I know it doesn't change what you told me on the porch, but I didn't want us to end with a fight. I enjoy the time we spent too much for that. He cleared his throat and pressed his fingers against the lids of his eyes. It just seemed so sudden, you know. I wasn't prepared for what you told me. He sighed. Hell, I wasn't prepared for much of anything. You can't imagine what it was like up there. Everything, the way she looked at the end, what the nurses were saying, the way it smelled. Both hands went to his face, and she heard his raggedy breath, a series of quick intakes followed by a long exhale. It just I just needed to talk to someone I knew would listen. Oh boy, Julie thought. Could this have possibly been any worse? She forced a wan smile. Oh, AG finally reached. AG, you finally come? About time. How you doing? How are you, AG? Good to see you. Who's that, Trina? Trina, the singer is here. How are you doing, my love? She forced a wan smile. We can talk, she said. We are still friends, aren't we? Richard rambled on for a couple of hours. A couple of hours? Really? Bouncing from subject to subject, his memories of his mother, what he was thinking when he first walked into the hospital room, how it felt the following morning to know he was holding her hand for the last time. After he had been talking for a while, Julie offered him a beer. As the evening went on, He finished 3 without seeming to notice. Every now and then he'd pause and stare off to the side of the room, a dazed expression on his face, as if he had forgotten what he was trying to say. Other times he spoke as though he had just downed a double espresso, the words running together. Throughout it all, Julie listened. She asked an occasional question when it seemed appropriate, but that was all. She saw tears more than once, but when they welled up, Richard would pinch the bridge of his nose to stop them. Midnight came and went. The hands of the clock on the mantelpiece rolled past 1, then began edging towards 2. By then, the beer and emotional exhaustion had taken their toll. Richard had begun to repeat himself, and his words had begun to slur. When Julie went to the kitchen for a glass of water for herself, she noticed that Richard's eyes had closed. Wedged into the corner of the couch, his head was angled against the back cushion, his mouth open, his breath was coming in a steady rhythm. Holding the glass of water, she stood in place, thinking, "Oh, this is just great. So what do I do now?" She wanted to wake him, but didn't think he was sober enough to drive. She wasn't comfortable having him stay, but then again, he was already asleep. And if she woke him again, he might want to talk some more. Despite her willingness to listen if he needed her to, she was exhausted. "Richard," she whispered, "are you awake?" Nothing. A moment later, she tried again with the same result. She figured she could shout or nudge him awake, but considering the options, it seemed like more trouble than it was worth. "It's no big deal," she finally decided. "He's out." Julie turned out the lights and, leaving him where he was, headed back into the bedroom, closing and locking the door behind her. Singer was on the bed. He raised his head, watching as she slipped into her pajamas. "It's only for tonight," she explained, as if trying to convince herself she was doing the right thing. "It's not like I'm changing my mind. It's just that I'm tired. Julie woke at dawn, and after peeking at the clock, she groaned and rolled over, trying to ward off the day. I don't know why, Julie, you playing with fire. Because how you going to explain to Mike if Mike saw Richard's car there all night? How are you going to explain to Mike that Richard didn't spend the night with you? Ah, she was sluggish and felt as if she were suffering from a hangover. After crawling out of bed, she cracked open the door to peek out. Richard still appeared to be sleeping. She hopped into the shower and dressed for work. She didn't want him to see her in her pajamas. By the time she entered the living room, with Singer moving warily beside her, Richard was sitting up on the couch, rubbing his face. His keys were perched on top of his wallet on the table in front of him. "Oh, hey," he said, looking embarrassed. "I guess I conked out, didn't I? I'm sorry about that. It was a long day, you see." "Yeah, it was," he responded. He took a moment to reach for his wallet as he stood up, a brief smile flickering across his face. "Thanks for letting me stay last night. I really do appreciate it." "No problem," she said. "You gonna be okay." "I guess I have to be. Life goes on, right?" His shirt was wrinkled as he brushed at it with his hands. "I'm sorry again for the way I acted last night," he added. "I don't know what got into me." Julie's hair hadn't dried completely, and she felt a drip of water soaking through the fabric of her blouse. "It's okay," she said, "and I know it must seem like it came out of the blue, but—" He shook his head. "No, no, it's fine. You don't have to explain. I understand perfectly. Mike seems like a nice guy." She hesitated. "He is. she finally said. But thank you. I want you to be happy. That's all I ever wanted. You're a great person, and you deserve that, especially after listening to me drone on and on last night. You have no idea how much that meant to me. No hard feelings? No, not at all. No hard feelings, she repeated. Are we still friends? Sure, he said. Thanks for that. Then, after a beat, he picked up his keys and started towards the door. Opening it, he looked over his shoulder. Mike's a good guy, he called out. Don't forget that. He smiled, but it carried with it a trace of melancholy. Goodbye, Julie. When he finally got in the car, Julie felt herself exhale, thankful that it had gone a lot better than she had thought it would. Then, frowning, she changed her mind. Well, better than last night, anyway. Anything was better than that, but at least it's over now. At least it's over now. So she think it's over now. I still don't trust Richard. I still don't trust him. Let me see who is this texted me. Hold on a second there, guys. Somebody texted me with an important text. I'm not sure what that is. Oopsie daisy. OMG. Hold on there, gentle people. Let us continue. Oh my God, this is not what I intended to do. Okay. Okay. Let us continue. Inside the rented Victorian, Richard made his way up to the stairs and into a corner. He had painted the walls black and covered the windows with duct tape and a light blocking tarp. A red light dangled over the makeshift table along the far wall. His photograph equipment was in the corner: four different cameras, a dozen lenses, boxes of film. He turned on the lamp and angled the shade so the light could fan out better. Near the shadow containers of chemicals he used to develop the film was a stack of photographs that he had taken on his date with Julie, and he reached for them. He thumbed through the images, pausing every now and then to stare at her. She had looked happy that weekend, he thought, as if she had known her life had suddenly changed for the better. And lovely, too. In studying her expressions, he couldn't find anything to explain what had happened last night. He shook his head. No, he wouldn't hold her mistake against her. Anyone who could move from anger to empathy as effortlessly as she had was a treasure, and he was lucky to have found her. He knew quite a bit. He knew quite a bit about Julie Barrington now. Her mother was a drunk with a preference for vodka who lived in a ramshackle trailer on the outskirts of Daytona Beach in Florida. Her mother was currently in Minnesota, living with another woman and surviving on a disability check for a mishap that had occurred while working construction. They had been married 2 years before he had left town suddenly. Julie was 3 years old at the time. 6 different men had lived with Julie and her mother at one time or another, the shortest for a month, the longest for 2 years. Moved half a dozen times, always from one dump to the next. A different school every other year until high school. First boyfriend at 14. He played football and basketball, and a picture of them together had made the yearbook. Appeared as a minor character in two school plays, dropped out before graduation, and vanished for a few months before coming here. Him a read out Julie life. Everything Julie told him. He had no idea what Jim had done to entice her to a place like Swansboro. Happy marriage, bland husband, nice but bland. He had also learned about Mike from one of the locals after he had met him at the Clipper. Amazing how buying a few drinks at a bar can accomplish so much. Mike was in love with Julie, but Richard had already known that. He hadn't known about the demise of his previous relationships, however, and Sarah's infidelity had intrigued him. He remembered nodding as he had considered the possibilities that had suddenly opened up. He had also learned that Mike had been best man at Julie's wedding, and their relationship began to make sense to him. Mike was comfortable, a link to her past, a link to Jim. He understood Julie's desire to hold on to that, to pull away from anything that might take that away. But it was a desire born of fear of ending up like her mother, fear of losing everything for which she had worked so hard, fear of the unknown. He wasn't surprised that Singer slept in the room with her, and he suspected that she had locked her bedroom door as well. So carefully, he thought, it was probably something she had been doing even as a child, considering the men her mother had brought home. But there was no reason to live that way, at least not anymore. She couldn't move forward as he had. Their childhoods probably weren't that different after all. The drinking, the beatings, the cockroach infested kitchen, the smell of mold and rotting drywall, the soupy well water from the tap that made him sick to his stomach. He only escaped, his only escape had been through the photographs in books by Ansel Adams, photographs that seemed to whisper of other places, better places. He had discovered the book. He had discovered the books in the school library and he had spent long hours studying them, losing himself in the surreally beautiful landscapes. His mother had noticed his interest, and though Christmas was usually a dismal affair, she had somehow persuaded his father to spend money on a small camera and 2 boxes of film when Richard was only 10 years old. It was the only time in his life that he could remember shedding tears of happiness. He spent hours photographing items in the house or birds in the backyard. He took pictures of dusk and dawn because he liked the light at those hours. He became adept at moving silently, obtaining close-ups that seemed impossible. When he finished a roll of film, he would run inside and beg his father to have them developed. When the photos were ready, he would stare at them in his bedroom, trying to assess what he had done right or wrong. In the beginning, his father seemed amused at his interest and even glanced through the first couple of rolls. Then the comments started. "Oh, look, another bird," he'd say sarcastically, and "Gee, here's another one." Eventually, he began to resent the money being spent on his son's new hobby. "You're just pissing it away, aren't you?" he snarled, but inside But instead of suggesting that Richard do some chores around the neighborhood to pay for the developing himself, his father decided to teach him a lesson. He had been drinking again that night, and both Richard and his mother were trying to stay out of his way, doing their best not to be noticed. As Richard sat in the kitchen, he could hear his father's ranting as he watched a football game on television. He had bet on his favorite team, the Patriots, but had lost, and Richard heard his father's anger as he pounded down the hall. A moment later, his father walked into the kitchen with the camera, and he set it down on the table. In his other hand was a hammer. After making sure he had his son's attention, he smashed the camera with a single swing. "I work all week to make a living, and all you want to do is piss it away? Now you won't have time for. Oh my God. Now we won't have this problem anymore." Later that year, his father died. The memories of that eve. that evening were vivid as well. The cut of morning sunlight on the kitchen table, the vacant look on his mother's face, the steady drip of the faucet as the hours rolled towards afternoon. The officers spoke in a hushed tones as they came and went. The coroner examined and removed the body, and then the wailing of his mother. Once they were finally alone, "What will we do without him?" she sobbed, shaking him by the shoulders. "How could this have happened?" This was how his father had been drinking at O'Brien's, a dingy bar in Boston, not far from their home. According to people at the bar, he had played one game of pool and lost, then sat at the bar the rest of the night, drinking Boilermakers. He had been laid off at the plant 2 months earlier and had been spending most nights there, an angry man looking for pity and solace in the company of alcoholics. By the time Vernon was beating both of them regularly, and the night before he had been particularly brutal. He left the bar a little past 10, stopped at the corner market for a pack of cigarettes, and drove past the houses in the blue-collar neighborhood where he lived. A neighbor who was walking his dog saw him as he was nearing home. The garage had been left open, and Vernon pulled the car into the small space. Boxes were piled against both walls. This was where the speculation began, however. That he had closed the garage door, there was no doubt, evidenced by the high levels of carbon monoxide. But why, the coroner wondered, hadn't he turned the engine off first? And why did he get back into the car after closing the garage door? For all intents and purposes, it looked like a suicide, though his friends at O'Brien's insisted there wasn't there wasn't a chance he would have done something like that. He was a fighter, not a quitter, they said. He wouldn't have killed himself. The officers came back to the house 2 days later, asking open-ended questions and looking for answers. The mother wailed incoherently. The 10-year-old offered only his steady gaze. By then, the bruises on the faces of the mother and son had begun to turn green at the edges, giving them both a haunted appearance. The officers left with nothing. In the end, it was ruled an accident, and the death was attributed to alcohol. A dozen people attended the funeral. His mother wore black and cried into a white handkerchief as he stood beside her. 3 people spoke at the graveside, offering kind words for a man who was momentarily down on his luck, but was otherwise a good human being, a steady provider, a loving husband and father. The son played his part well. He kept his eyes downcast. At times he brought his fingers to his cheek as if to swipe away a tear. He slipped his arm around his mother and nodded grimly and said, "Thank you," when others came up to offer their condolences. The next day, however, when the crowds were gone, he returned to the grave and stood in front of the freshly turned earth. Then he spat on it. In the dark room, Richard tacked one of the photographs to the wall, reminded that the past cast long shadows. It's easy to get confused, he thought. He knew she couldn't help it, and he understood. He forgave her for what she had done. He stared at her image. How could he not forgive her? Happy Monday to you all, everybody. Hope everybody's having a great, great Monday. Oh, so Richard has a tale of his own. His father committed what they thought was suicide, what the police classified as an accident, but he died. He was an alcoholic who beat Richard and his mother sick day and night. And that explains why Richard said he went to the grave and spat on it. That's like one of the most insulting things you can do to somebody after they are dead. Chapter 19 says, Because he was already dressed at the time Richard left, Julie had enough time to stop and grab a newspaper before she went into work. She sat at a small table outside a bagel shop, sipping coffee and reading, while Singer lounged at her feet. Putting aside the newspaper, she watched the quiet sundown come to life. One by one, signs in store windows were flipped, doors propped open to catch the early morning breeze. The sky was cloudless, and there was a hint of dew on the windshields of cars that had been parked on the street all night. Julie rose, offered the newspaper to a couple at the next table, tossed her empty cup in the garbage, and started up the street towards the salon. The garage had already been open for an hour, and thinking she still had a few minutes before she had to be at work, she decided, why not? I'm sure he's not too busy yet. Besides, she wanted to drop in to make sure that what she had been feeling that night before wasn't her imagination. She didn't intend to tell Mike that Richard had ended up spending the night. Try as she might, she couldn't think of any way to tell him that wouldn't seem suspect, especially in light of what had happened with Sarah. He would always wonder about it, she felt, creating a stubborn splinter of doubt and hurt. Anyway, it wasn't important. It was over now, and that's all that mattered. She crossed the street, Singer trotting ahead. By the time she walked by the time she walked past the cars waiting to be serviced, Mike was already making his way towards her, looking as though he had just picked the winning ticket in the lottery. Hey, Julie, he said. What a nice surprise. Though he had a streak of grease on his cheek and his brow was already shiny with sweat, she couldn't help but think, you look pretty darn good. And I'm definitely not imagining it. Yeah, I'm happy to see you too, big guy, Mike added, reaching towards Singer. It was while he was petting Singer that she noticed the band-aids. Hey, what happened to your fingers? Mike glanced at his hands. Oh, it's nothing. They're just a little sore this morning. Why? I guess I kind of scrunched them too hard last night before I got home. She frowned. Because of what? Because of what? Was it what I said on the beach? No, no, not at all, he said. Then, shrugging, he added, well, I guess that was part of the reason. I was just teasing. Well, I know, he said, but I got to wondering whether a new soap might work better. I wonder, guys, if Mike was outside during the night watching and realizing that Richard had stayed over. I'm not sure. So what did you use? Ajax? Ajax 409? Lysol? I pretty much tried everything. She put her hands to her hips and studied him. You know, sometimes I can't help wondering what you'll be like when you grow up. I don't think there'll be much chance of that, to tell you the truth. She laughed, thinking, I like this guy. How could I not? Well, I just wanted to drop in to tell you I had a great time last night. Me too, he said, and I'm looking forward to tonight. It should be fun. Their eyes met before Julie glanced at her watch. But listen, I should probably be going. I've got appointments all morning, and I'm supposed to have lunch with Emma, so I can't fall behind. Say hi to Emma for me, will you? Sure, she said. Have fun today. You too. She winked. And watch those fingers, will you? I'll hate to think you'll be bleeding all over the engines you work on. Ha ha, he said, not that he minded being teased. He knew this was her way of flirting with him. Real flirting, not friendly flirting. And by God, he liked that. He liked that a lot. They said their goodbyes, and a moment later, Julie was crossing the street with a bounce in her step. So it looks like your date went pretty well, huh? In his hands, Henry held a half-eaten donut. Mike hooked his thumb into his overalls and sniffed. Oh yeah, he said. It went really, really well. Henry waved the donut and shook his head. Will you cut the James Dean stuff, little brother? I'm telling you, it's not you. And it can't hide. It can't hide the cross-eyed, goofy look in your eyes. I don't look goofy, do I? Goofy, love-struck, whatever. Hey, I can't help it if she likes me. I know you can't. You are just irresistible, aren't you? I thought you'd be happy for me. I thought you'd be happy for me. I am happy, he said, and I'm proud of you too. Why? Because somehow, whatever your plan was, it looks like it worked. So what happened with Richard? Emma asked, as the bar the other night. At the bar the other night, it looked like you two were getting along great. Oh, you know how it goes. He was nice, but I just didn't feel anything for him. I guess it was the way he looked, huh? That part, I admit, wasn't too bad, Julie said, and Emma laughed. They were having salads at the deli, formerly a house in the historic district. Sunlight spread across the table in the corner, collecting in their glasses of tea and making them glow amber. I said the same thing to Henry after I got home. I kept asking why he didn't look that way anymore. What did he say? He said. Emma sat up in her seat and lowered her voice, mimicking Henry. I don't know what you are talking about, but if I wasn't sure you loved me so much, I think you just insulted me. Julie laughed. You sound exactly like him. Honey, when you have been married as long as I have been, you'll find out that it's not all that hard to do. The only thing I'm missing is the waving donut. Julie giggled into her tea, spitting a bit on the table. But he still makes you happy, right? Even after all this time? Most of the time, he's a pretty good guy. Sometimes I want to whack him with a frying pan. But I guess that's normal, right? Julie's eyes took on a mischievous gleam as she leaned forward in her seat. Did I ever tell you I once threw a pan at Jim? You did! When did that happen? I can't remember. I don't even remember what we were fighting about. But I launched that pan right at him. It missed, but I had his attention after that. OMG. Emma's eyebrows went up and down. Life behind closed doors is always a mystery, isn't it? I'd say it is. Emma took a sip of her tea, then started on her salad again. So, what's this I hear about Mike? Julie had known this was coming. In lieu of politics or sports or the latest headlines, people in this small town thrived on the goings on of its citizens. That depends on what you heard. I heard he asked you out and that you went to dinner. Kind of. Actually, I was the one who asked him out. He couldn't do it. She looked into her glass. What do you think? Mm, I think he probably froze up like a shadow pond in winter. Julie laughed. Well, pretty much. So how was it? What did you do? Julie recounted their date, and when she was finished, Emma leaned back in her seat. Sounds like it went well to me. Well, it did. She studied Julie's face for a moment. And what about? You know, did you think about? Well, she trailed off, and Julie finished for her. Jim? Emma nodded, and Julie considered it. Not as much as I thought I would, she said, and it didn't really bother me at all by the end. Mike and I, we just get along so well. He makes me laugh. He makes me feel good about myself. It's been a long time since I felt that way. You sound surprised. I was. To be honest, I wasn't sure how it would go. Emma's face softened. That's not surprising. You and Jim were really something. We used to joke about the way you stared at each other when you went out. Yeah, we were something, she said, a touch of wistfulness entering her voice. Emma paused. How did Mike seem? Fine, I guess. He was pretty nervous, to tell you the truth, but I don't think it had much to do with Jim. I think it had more to do with the date itself. Oh, gee, really? Julie smiled. Really, but I had a good time. So, do you like him? Of course I like him. No, I mean, do you like him? That's what it came down to, didn't it? Julie thought. In the end, she didn't need to answer. Her expression spoke volumes, and Emma reached across the table to squeeze Julie's hand. I'm glad. I always figured this was coming. You did? I think everyone did. I think everyone did, with the exception of you and Mike. It was just a matter of time. You never said anything. I didn't have to. I figured that you'd recognize the same thing in Mike that I do when you were good and ready. Like what? That he'll never let you down. That boy's got a heart the size of Kentucky and he loves you. That's important. Take it from someone who knows. My mom used to tell me that whatever you do, marry someone who loves you more than you love him. No, she didn't. Of course she did. And I listened to her. Why do you think Henry and I get along so well? I'm not saying that I don't love him, because I do. But if I ever left Henry or something, God forbid, ever, ha- God forbid if anything ever happened to me, and I don't think he'd be able to go on. And the guy would risk his life for me in a heartbeat. And you think Mike's that way? Honey, you can bet your bottom dollar on it. Julie was still thinking about her lunch with Emma when she left the salon at the end of the day. Thinking about a lot of things, actually, especially Jim. No doubt that wasn't Emma's intention, and even Julie's couldn't put her finger on exactly why she was feeling the way she did. But it had something to do with Emma's comment about her mother. And of course, Emma's remark about Henry not being able to go on if he ever lost her. That afternoon, she had missed Jim more than she had in a long, long time. She supposes because of what was happening with Mike. She was moving on, but she began to wonder if Jim would have been able to had their positions been reversed. She thought he probably would have, but if not, did that mean he had loved her more than she had loved him? And what will happen, she wondered, if I do fall in love with Mike? What would happen to her feelings for Jim, her memories of Jim? Those were the questions that circled endlessly through her mind after lunch, questions with answers she didn't want to face. Would his mem- would her memories gradually diminish? She wondered, fading away like decaying photographs? She didn't know, nor did she know why the prospect of seeing Mike tonight left her feeling more nervous than she had been yesterday, more nervous than she had felt about any of her other dates, for that matter. Why now, though? Why now? She thought. Maybe she thought answering her own question. It's because I know this one is different. Julie reached the Jeep and got in. Singer hopped into the back, and Julie started the engine. She didn't she didn't head towards home. Instead, she followed the main road for a few blocks to look and took a left, heading toward the outskirts of town. A few minutes later, after another turn, she reached Brookview Cemetery. Jim's headstone was a short walk away, just over the rise and off the main path. In the shade of a hickory tree, Julie made her way up the path. When she got closer, Singer stopped, refusing to follow any further. He never had. In the beginning, she wasn't sure why Singer always stayed back, but over time, she came to think that somehow he knew she wanted to be alone there. She reached the gravesite and stood over it, not knowing what she would feel today. She took a deep breath, waiting for the tears to come, but they didn't. Nor did she feel the heaviness she always had in the past. She pictured Jim in her mind, uh, recalling the happy times. And though a faint feeling of sadness and loss came from the memories, it was like hearing a clock tower chime in the distance, echoing softly before finally fading away. In its place, there was a numbness. She wasn't sure what it meant until she saw the winged angel etched above his name, the one that always reminded her of the letter that had come with Singer. It would break my heart if I thought you'd never be happy again. Find someone who makes you happy. The world is a better place when you smile. Standing by his grave, she suddenly realized that maybe this was what he had meant by those words. And as she had the night before, she suddenly knew Jim would be happy for her. No, she thought, I won't forget you, ever, and neither will Mike. That's what makes him different, too. She stayed up. She stayed until the mosquitoes began to circle. One landed on her arm, and she slapped it away. Glad she had come, but knowing she could probably be going. Mike was going to pick her up in less than an hour, and she wanted to be ready. A breath of wind shook the leaves above, sounding like the faint rattle of shaken pebbles in a jar. After a moment, it stopped, as if someone had muted the sound. But then it wasn't quiet anymore. From the road, she heard a passing car, the sound of the engine rising and falling before disappearing. A child's voice carrying from the distant houses. There was a faint brushing sound, something scraping the bark of a nearby tree. A cardinal broke from the branches, and glancing over her shoulder, Julie saw Singer swiveling his head, his ears twitching. He remained rooted in place, however, and Julie saw nothing. She frowned slightly and crossed her arms. Turning from the head, Turning from the headstone, she tucked her head down and began walking towards the car, goose pimples lifting the hairs on her arm. So this seems like a thing. This seems like maybe an American thing where, because remember when we read that book about that other woman, how the woman who was what was her name again? Sarah, I forgot her name. But remember, her husband had died in the war, and when she fell in love again, she went to the cemetery to talk to her husband to tell. I guess she can't talk to him because he's dead. To talk to his spirit or whatever, to tell him that she had found love again and get his blessings to move on. It seems like a thing. Have you all ever experienced that? I don't know, but when I grew up, I don't remember seeing anybody going to any grave to say, I have fallen in love again, so here I am. I'm coming to get your blessings. We Jamaicans, we don't do those things. Going to get the blessings of the dead. There's no blessings to be had from the dead. The dead is dead. Can't come back. So there's no blessings to be had from the dead. But anyway, we are going to end right here. When we come back tomorrow, we will continue the reading of this book by Nicholas Sparks. We will continue the reading of this book tomorrow because this book, The Guardian, seems to be a very healthy read. And I love to read healthy. I love healthy reads. I don't love the reads that are full of carnage. And this one seems to be a healthy one. Watch your thing, Jamaica, roll up in the place. Things, Jamaica, what's up, my darling sister? How are you doing, my love? Thing Jamaica say, love, I love you for free. I love you, sweetheart. Love you, my darling. How are you doing? So good to see you. So good to see you. You are still at that place, huh? I see you doing boat rides and all. Watch yourself, you know. Watch yourself, thing. You looking so fine. I'm always happy to see you. AG says, I'm driving and listening. Good, AG. You're driving and listening. We have come to the end of the reading for today. You know, I can't drop everything all at once. So when we get back together tomorrow, I will continue. I will continue reading. Things say I live a good life. Hey, why not? Why not live a good life? Life is there to live. Why not live it and live it well? Yeah. And you come into the life when the life is about to end, my dear sister. Oh, you have a new channel? White name. Talk to me, drop it. Cause you know say wherever you are. I just hey G, some of come down me yard. No worry, me soon gonna me yard. You gonna know when me reach home. No worry yourself. Me soon gonna me yard. Yeah. Me I go go me yard AG, don't worry yourself. Mm. I mean, alright, I know me feel like say you could have put on one jacket and get one box and walk go down the road. Walk go down the road, go pick some prickly pear. Wanna think people who wanna come with me? Who want to come with me? Wanna talk quick now? You want me cut off this and make we go walk go pick pears? Want go walk go pick some and pear them before night come down. Yeah. I'm want go ponder. I think we want go on the road later. What do you think? You're not saying anything. The 1 hour of novel reading for the day is the one hour of novel reading is over. So see the reading is over. Now me want to go down the road. Me want to go down the road. Go pick some more. Go pick some more prickly pears. Come now, things. Tell me what the name of the new. Come now. Tell me what is the name of the new channel. Come on, talk to me. Talk to me. What's the name of the new channel? You not tell me the name of the new channel. Make us all go look for it so that you can get some support. May I drink little ginger beer and stuff, you know? Before me go walk down the street. Before me go walk down the street and look for the peer them. You tell me, you text me? Let me look. Hold on, let me look. Oh, teacher on cruise ship? Oh, let me look if I find it. Quick, I'm a phone there. What's that? What's that? My phone disappeared too. What's that? just have the phone right there, so I know me not see where it go. Teacher on cruise ship. Sure. I don't know what me do with the phone. I just have the phone in my hand. Move with it. I'm convinced there's something in me, something wrong. Cause what your phone on me I look for? All right, let me look on YouTube and see if I find you. Teacher on cruise ship. Teacher on cruise ship. Mr. The phone I play hide and seek with me to inside. Teacher. Oh, see I here for you. Teacher work on the cruise ship. Guys, go and support Things Jamaica on this new channel she have here. Teacher working on a cruise ship. May I forgot listen may I forgot listen to these may I forgot listen to these videos later. And see you have all where do you left the classroom or you just get a break? Very nice. Very, very nice. Okay, then I forgot check it out later. But guys, those of you who have been here were here with me as I read. I hope you all enjoyed the reading as much as I enjoy bringing it to you. Now I want to go take. Oh, you left. Okay, you gotta do what you gotta do, my sister. Yep, you got to do what you got to do, no matter what. Mm-hmm. Gotta do what you gotta do. If it ain't working, you gotta change. You gotta switch it up. Yeah, you gotta do things a little differently. Yeah, that makes sense. If it makes sense for you, it makes sense. Yes, my dear. You are welcome. I wish you all the best, my love. Everything will be everything will be just fine. That's how things gotta go. You gotta change up sometimes. Sometimes things might look like it's going right, but all you need is a little bit of change. A little bit of change. Yeah. And so now we're gonna go on the street. I'm gonna cut off this live, and then when I'm outside, I'm going to put on I'm going to put on the other live so we can go walk and look for the